take any options off the table as commander-in-chief. Circumstances can change. You never know what contingencies you have to deal with. But what I do know is that I cannot see a scenario right now in which American boots on the ground would make any sense.
We're not waiting. We're not standing by. We are currently the largest humanitarian donor to deal with the crisis in Syria. We are the largest contributor of non-lethal aid to the opposition. We've mobilized 80 countries to support the opposition.
Charles, the White House press secretary today said the president's use of the term red line was deliberate and based on U.S. policy. It comes after a New York Times article quoting senior officials saying they were surprised by the president's, quote, unscripted comments about Syrian chemical weapons.
Which means the contradictions on the meaning of all this continues. They can't even get the cover up the retract story correct. As you say, on the one hand saying, well, it was either a slip or something offhand, and now saying, no, it was intended. But in either case, up to now, it's meaningless. I think what's really interesting is that the Israelis went ahead and acted on a red line undeclared that everybody understands in the region. For the Israelis who don't have a dog in the fight, it's a Shiite-Sunni war, which is not going to help Israel in either way, but it has a red line on the issue of strategic balance between it and its enemies in terms of weaponry. And it will not allow, and everyone knows it will not allow, Hezbollah to acquire weaponry that will give it a huge advantage in a future war. And what the weapons that Israel attacked today are missiles of precision that could hit Tel Aviv. It will not allow that to went out and attacked. And the reason I think it'll have an effect on the U.S. response is because it demonstrated that Israel could penetrate the defenses that the Syrians have with complete impunity. And the notion that the only way to stop the Syrian air war on its own people is to do a campaign like we did in Libya, an all-out campaign that knocks out all the air defenses, is not right. Obviously, the Israelis were able to manage an attack without that, and it implies that we could use, like with cruise missiles or other offshore weaponry, hitting strategic areas in Syria that would reduce Assad's capacity to put up aircraft.
He had the opportunity to take action with our international partners to prevent the imminent attack on a city that would have led to countless deaths at the hands of the Gaddafi regime. And he took that action because the policy options were available to him that, while not without risk, he believed could be successful, and he took that action. The circumstances in Libya present a different array of challenges.
More people die in Syria in a weekend than were likely to die in an attack on Benghazi. Jay Carney's argument just doesn't hold up.
Okay, so do we act soon?
I don't know.
No boots on the ground, but they're going to act soon with something, weapons training, air power.
I think they'll probably supply weapons to some of the rebels. I don't see an actual use of military on our side.
The thing about the ARB is that it's simply wrong, and it's one of the reasons whistleblowers are coming forward right now. Gregory Hicks, for example, has never been allowed to see the classified ARB report, which is pretty absurd when you consider he's the most knowledgeable person in country that can testify as to what was going on and what the ambassador thought and said. And ultimately, he was cut out of the process of those famous talking points.
Well, it was scrubbed. It was totally inaccurate. You're absolutely right. There's no excuse for that. It was false information, and what they try to do is harmonize what happened in Benghazi with what happened everywhere else across the Middle East, which was totally wrong.
And do you think it was scrubbed because of the fact that that didn't fit into the president's narrative that al-Qaeda was on the run?
Well, I think it was a victory of hope over reality, to be honest with you. They were hoping that this wasn't the case.
Charles, in this testimony that's, we've already seen some of this interview with Greg Hicks, the #2 guy, again, on the ground. He specifically says that special forces in Tripoli were told to stand down and not get on a C-130 that was going to go from Tripoli to Benghazi, that would have been there in time for the second attack, the second wave. They were told to not get on that plane.
And he's also said that when he saw what Susan Rice said on television, that his jaw dropped, that it contradicted the first law of diplomacy. You do not contradict and embarrass a friendly foreign leader. Her statement came minutes after the president of Libya had declared that it obvious was a terror attack. It embarrassed him, Hicks, who was the acting ambassador, of course, at the time after the death of Ambassador Stevens. He said as a result of embarrassing, humiliating the government, that's probably the reason why there was no cooperation afterwards in the FBI investigation. But he also says, or at least his lawyer now says, that after his reaction, he's been threatened with intimidation, threatened with reprisals, as has Mark Thompson, the other official, the former Marine, and that is by definition a cover-up.
This has been a Sunfish production.